Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan. I'm your host. And guys, today it's just going to be me. We're going to talk about actually executing on projects, prioritizing those projects, and why that all matters. Now, I personally have done over $750 million worth of commercial construction projects. All those buildings were primarily done in BIM and Revit. So I've become really good at that. And I've developed software to automate the placement of things within Revit. So to say that I know Revit pretty well and the construction process pretty well would be accurate. With that, my co-host, who typically joins me here or does solo episodes of his own, is Matt Vetter, who's done $100+ million worth of commercial buildings as a general contractor in his career. So again, we have a lot of experience that we want to bring to you guys from the lessons that we've learned along the way. I say all of this to say that, and what we're going to get into about doing projects, executing them, I'm going to come from the design side, right? Electrical engineer, led electrical and mechanical, electrical plumbing, MEP teams for the trades. So today, let us talk about prioritizing projects, how to get things done, and running things effectively. So one of the biggest things in construction and really any industry at all is communication. Communication breakdowns are what hold up projects. Who needs what when? Why do they need it? What do they need it for? And really your role in that. So I sit through a lot of meetings, and lately I've been sitting in a lot of coordination meetings. In those meetings, everyone does need to be there because if something comes up, it's great for the whole team to be apprised of those items that need to be resolved, right? Whether it's a duct to move or maybe something didn't get modeled correctly, or, could we adjust this, that, or the other thing for the building trades? So for example, in one of the meetings that I was sitting in today, there was like sprinkler pipes that were going right through the middle of my light fixtures. Well, I mean, that is a problem. And so there were two solutions that came up. One is you can either move the pipe to the, horizontal, right, left or right of those lights, which is the preferred thing. Or it came up earlier in the meeting that, hey, look, I have those lights modeled at 10 inches deep. They are not 10 inches deep, but that is to have the adequate clearance around those fixtures. So instead of 10 inches, we can really go down to 6, right? The fixture is about 2 inches deep. And then we need 3 to 4 inches for installation purposes of that fixture. So 6 inches modeled of a fixture gives us the adequate clearance to install that fixture, work above it, replace it in any event that might need to happen, and just general good working clearances. So we can shave 4 inches down. And again, in construction, that is quite a bit, right? 4 inches makes a heck of a difference. So in this example, right, it's more obvious for the sprinkler pipe to move to the left so that, hey, you're not over a light, right? That makes sense to not put water over top of a light, right? Or any plumbing line, water lines of any type. So we're going to move that plumbing line horizontal. Cool, no big deal. Other instances are like a duct, right? A duct coming in through a building, they got to come under structural steel and then drop down for their diffusers in certain spots. And so your main branch lines, again, there's some play in those things, but often too, HVAC can't move a whole bunch. So again, in that light model where, again, we have an extra 4 inches shown where we now have a clash against the duct and the light, usually lights don't move. So then we again had to adjust our modeling of it, right? We want to stay a little to the better of it, being on the electrical side of things, right? That we have enough working clearances. We're going to basically give ourselves a little more than we actually needed, and we'd adjust accordingly. Well, now to acquiesce for everybody, we're going to shrink that clearance tolerance to what's actually needed, and then allow everybody to come in and do their thing, right? So in that case where we had a clash, when you run a clash report in Navisworks, that you had a duct hitting a light. Well, now when we readjust our light dimensions, we're not going to have that problem. So, and the same thing then went for looking at electrical rooms where sprinkler pipe and fire protection pipe was going over panels. And that problem was that I didn't have the clearances turned on or shown up in the Navisworks export for everybody to judge against. And the thing that I ran into with that is that in the clearances of the model within the Revit family, they were shown as transparent. So I needed to make them actually an opaque material so that they would show up in the Navisworks export so that it could then be clashed against. So little things like this in commercial projects, especially if you're doing BIM coordination, that you need to have solid objects so that a solid meets a solid, it ends up being a clash and then can generate a report instance so that it can be resolved in the field. Now, the thing that I will say about coordination meetings and actually doing and getting into projects is that with these BIM coordination meetings, nobody really likes them. Let me say that. But in doing it and going through these processes that we have in place during the construction phase, resolves a lot of issues that the design team did not handle, and then allows it also is really, you had your estimators dealing with the model and the takeoffs during bid phase, and then it gets handed over to the BIM team once the project is actually won. What this also allows is for the BIM team and some of your foremen, your site superintendents, your guys to start to be involved in the project, see it digitally, know where things are, know where rooms are, know where their ductwork's going to go, their piping, all those parts and pieces, so that when they do step on the job site, they have a better understanding of what the project is going to entail. So while nobody likes the BIM coordination meetings, right, they are kind of painful and can be somewhat annoying at times to attend. They are very, very much necessary. So I am a big fan of having them. I am a big fan of the trades doing this on projects, because again, not only does it allow people to become familiar, it does save you guys a lot of time and money on the project prior to ever stepping foot on site. So the 5, 10, 20 grand, maybe more, that you're going to spend to have a project modeled and detailed is well worth it in the time savings, cost savings, and potential really just massive amounts of time lost in the field when you resolve all these things prior to ever stepping on foot on a job site. So don't let the kind of frustration in those meetings overwhelm the fact that they are a positive thing for you and your teams to do and get into. So executing on projects and planning them out. So what I've also learned in going through some of these BIM coordination meetings and then just in general executing on projects is planning. So we know that on a day-to-day basis that fires happen, right? Things come up and it becomes really, really overwhelming at times as to like what you're even able to achieve. And so the thing that I think about in really planning out your day, your week, how projects roll out, getting work done, especially if you're executing on projects. You need to have time allocated well enough that you're going to be able to not only do the work that you need to do, but also deal with any fires that might come up. So, for example, I had a project, I kind of had my day planned out of all the things I was going to do today. I had 2 or 3 projects to get done. I figured they'd each take, a couple hours to get through. And well, that didn't quite work out the way that I had planned it, mainly because I had things come up on other projects that I was not expecting to work on, but because they were urgent and somewhat important because we're in bidding, so addendums need to be released and whatnot for the project, it was crucial that I get things out. So then I had to take, the hour or so to adjust that, or then it ended up being a few hours to answer questions, deal with addendums, all that kind of good stuff to then get the project out and those addendums issued with the changes that were needed, right? It doesn't help that I'm also going on vacation, but you get the point, right? It doesn't matter if you're trying to get out for the day or the week or whatever it might be, those things pop up and happen. So what I wanted to really address here is that it's important to plan a good amount of buffer within your days and really your weeks. So for me, and I know Matt's addressed this on a previous episode, but by the nature of construction, especially when you have a good number of projects in construction, it's super important to note what is urgent. Know that urgent things are going to come up, right? People need you on site. They need, especially like during bidding phase, they need answers to things if you're on the design team. And then in construction, there are going to be crucial periods during the construction phase and schedules where you've just got to get that thing out the door, right? You've got to work late or plan that extra time for a fire drill, right? Of a project that you maybe weren't planning to be at, right? If you're a project manager or superintendent, you've got a couple projects that you're on, and maybe you weren't planning to be at that specific site or working on that specific project that given day. And then, things go to hell in a handbasket and you're now forced to be there and not where you thought you were going to be for the day, right? That does happen. It happens more often than I'm sure we would all like to admit, but it's one of those kind of natures of the construction world. So what I want to address in here is in giving deadlines and giving reasonable timelines for things. If you're like me and you think you can do it in 15 minutes or an hour or two, or, in a morning, just know that while you might be able to, if you had dedicated attention to the thing you were trying to do, more likely you're not going to get that dedicated attention. So by getting it done by, midday, really it's going to be end of day. And that end of day isn't going to be necessarily 5 o'clock. It'll be, 6, 7, whenever you get it done for that day. So what I like to end up doing is giving myself a little more buffer in these things to make sure that I can meet the deadline that I say I'm going to meet, right? Not my intentions, right? Your intentions aren't a cashable thing, right? It's a deliverable. That is the cashable asset that you're going after here. So we want to make sure that we really stick to our word, that we're honest to ourselves, to our clients, and through that, give yourself a little bit of buffer time in doing that. So for example, in all these addendums and whatnot, I was just honest with guys, like, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. If I don't get to it today, for whatever reason, I'll get to it, when I return next week. And so a lot of this comes down to being honest, being transparent with guys. And that goes a long way with folks to ultimately give them the answers that they need. They can plan accordingly and go from there. All too often we're give kind of unreasonable timelines, right? Or you think that people want it sooner rather than later. And there's for sure occasions where people are going to push on you for those timelines, but usually kind of whatever you end up giving, folks are fine with. So give yourself a little more grace, a little more time to, especially if you've got a lot of projects going on, which I find myself, I've got, a good handful of projects that I'm dealing with right now. So it's important to give myself a little more time as things come up, as maybe a problem comes up that is a little more complicated than I thought it was going to be, right? More code research, more in-depth diving, and also giving people the answers where if those questions do come up, man, I got to look at that. Like, let me dig into the code. Let me get you a better answer on that. And then what I have on the drawings. Now, what I have is right, but hey, we need to be a little more aggressive. We need to save a little more money. We need to do things a little more economically. Okay, let me see what I can really get to that will still work, that will be cost effective, that will be to code. Let me go and find those pieces and let me get back to you, right? So it's things like that where we're trying to give really good answers, trying to solve the problem, trying to be cost effective with our solutions, and ultimately do what we say we're going to do. And I think in construction, one of the best things that you can do to win clients, keep clients, right? Because it is getting your foot in the door, right? That is the first and most important thing in earning a client, is getting your foot in the door. In the second most important thing, especially on the design side, is to do what you say you're going to do. Like, be good at what you're doing. That goes a heck of a long way in keeping your clients, right? Knowing the code, or at least going and do the code research to have an answer that you can back up, right? Like, those are important things to understand and note. as we go through projects is every deliverable, everything that you provide to your clients is really continuing to earn their business. And I think sometimes we might forget that, but it's truly important that in most construction firms, you need a handful of clients, right? So in the world that I'm going after right now in design build contractors, like if we had a stable of 10, 15, 20 contractors, we would have a really good business, right? And so I think for a lot of folks, and even when I was on more the kind of institutional side of stuff in a MEP firm, we did a lot of work for institutions, so hospitals, universities, and really we had like 4 clients. We had a hospital system, we had 2 universities, and those were like our primary clients. And we were starting to get, projects here and there from other folks, but really those were our main clients. And I can look back through all the firms that I've been at, and we had really a stable of 5 to 10 really good kind of big clients. And that's where the majority of our work came from. So for most firms, anywhere kind of south of 15 million, that's really all you need is like 5 to 10 good clients in the design world. And maybe even in the construction world, right? So if you look at like our fees and south of 15 million for say 10 clients, then in the construction world, right, 10 clients for the amount of work that we were doing at 15 million, where our fees are only 5% of the job. So times 20 for 15. So that would be, let me do math here. 20 times 15. So 300 million would be that what the construction firm that did that work is getting, right? So again, you only need a handful of clients in doing that work as well. So kind of a good example for you guys in doing projects, planning it out, right? Sticking to your word, doing what you say you're going to do. And then also not being afraid to say that you'll find those answers. You'll dig into the code. You'll be a little more quote unquote aggressive, right? Or to the letter of the code, right? Not adding a little bit. And some of that is in our nature, right? To kind of pad our liability, if you will, to make it a little more robust, a little less prone to failure. Those types of things is what we tend to add as engineers, designers. It's also why contractors kind of get mad at us, because we do build in a little bit of bulk to those things because we don't want it to fail. And then it becomes a cost issue. And then we have to kind of go a little sharpen our pencils, if you will, on some of those calculations. But all that to say, understand kind of where your client is, what they're looking to do with the project, where their budgets are at, where we need to be a little more aggressive, and then also be willing to take feedback, right, from those contractors, from the RFIs we get on projects, and understanding that we're all in this to make a successful project and have it go the way that it needs to for the owner, right, for them to be under budget, for the project to have the necessary items that it needs, and for it to successfully operate. So again, this is doing what you say you're going to do, having a good kind of schedule, giving yourself a little more time to maintain your word and integrity. Usually people are pretty good with it. I've noticed and found in that. And then 3, BIM coordination meetings are useful as much as we sometimes don't want them. And meetings in general, they're useful, even though sometimes, again, we might not want them or love being there, but they are important to make sure that everybody's on the same page as we go forward. And the next thing that I want to touch here and leave it open for the next episode is really being focused in on the projects that you're doing. I'm actually heading to North Carolina to go on a backpacking trip with 3 of 7 project to do their basic course. And from here, I won't have service or anything like that. So I will kind of have to be present in that moment. And it's going to be a good reset for me. And on the next episode, we'll talk about being present, how we can use that and flex that muscle, right? Strengthen that present muscle so that when you're in person with somebody, you're present with them. You're not constantly checking your phone or email or whatever, worrying about something else, right? You're present in that moment with that person. And the same thing goes for present on projects and focused and dialed in. It is a muscle, right? It's something that we all have to work on in some way, shape, or form to be more effective. And the more we can flex that muscle, being present, being in the moment, the better off we are all going to be. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much. And until next time.